They called it a joke. Hey, country girl, the break room's that way. This area's for staff, not service. It echoed down the hallway with a kind of laughter that wasn't quite loud, but carried just enough weight to bruise. Amina didn't stop walking, but something in her shoulder pulled tighter. She didn't flinch, didn't reply, just adjusted the folder in her hands. Paper shifted. Silence settled. Three of them leaned near the elevator, pressed shirts, spotless sneakers, confidence untouched. They didn't expect her to say anything. They expected her to move, to blush, to disappear. She walked past them without a word, her badge still visible against the plain cardigan she had ironed that morning. Her shoes weren't designer, but they were clean, from a Walmart back home. Still had the Georgia clay at the sole. Inside the bullpen, the lights felt a little too white. Desks filled, screens alive. But no one looked up, except to see her, briefly, then away. A woman with a clipboard stepped forward, eyes flicking to Amina's shoes. Do you even know how to run a client meeting? Another voice. From behind, you'll need help using the printer. Right, a third one. Low but sharp. This isn't the DMV. Sweetie? Amina reached her desk. Or the one they'd decided was hers. Far end, near the closet, next to the copier. Watch her to underwear. A man across the room Richard watched. Didn't wave. Didn't nod. Just turned to his assistant and said, She's here. Let's keep her busy. Then, as if it were helpful, you know how to make coffee, right? She did. She also knew 7 languages. But for now, she poured the coffee. Steady hand. No spill. 3 mugs. Black. Sugar. Cream. She placed them quietly on a tray and carried it like it mattered. At 9:02 a.m., the first file landed. Half French, half broken English. Legal terms wrapped in cultural mistranslations. She saw the errors before she even sat down. A red pen from her own bag marked the margin. Cleaner as Farinino. Direct to a worrying to No flair. Behind her, whispers. She looks like someone's cousin from HR. Probably temp work. That accent, Mississippi, Georgia, I think. Or Antonin. She heard them all. Of course she did. The room wasn't loud, but the silence between sentences had sharp edges. One of the women from earlier stopped near her desk again, peeked at the screen, paused. You sure you're in the right seat? Amina looked up. Just once. Her face still. No fight in her eyes. But no apology either. Minutes later, Richard dropped another folder. Meeting in 5. Bring these. She stood, straightened her blouse, picked up the stack. One step into the hallway. Another whisper, can she even speak proper English? She didn't turn all the way. Just enough for the light to catch her face. Then, with a calm that wasn't meant to wound but did, only 7 languages. And she kept walking. No one laughed. No one followed. Just quiet. The kind that makes a person realize the ground under them has shifted. Across the floor, a junior analyst blinked hard. Someone else coughed. A clipboard clicked shut. And Amina, without raising her voice, had said more than anyone expected. They didn't know who she was. But now, they wanted to. And that was enough for now. As she neared the glass doors of the meeting room, her pace didn't slow. Inside, through the haze of reflections and fluorescent light, she could see the room was already tense, projectors humming, someone speaking too fast, others nodding without understanding. A multilingual file lay open on the table. French legalese mixed with broken summaries. No one could agree on what it meant. She didn't knock. Just stepped inside, quiet. Straightened the stack in her arms. Then, without being asked, placed the corrected version on the table. Annotated. Structured. A man in a blazer looked up, confused. And you are She didn't answer. She just pointed gently at a clause on page 3. That phrase doesn't mean terminate, she said. It means review after notice. Either if you respond with a termination clause, they'll walk. A pause. long enough for the heat in the room to shift. No one moved. No one laughed. Someone pressed pause on the projector. And in the stillness, her voice level, unwavering, cut clean through the noise. It was 9:09 a.m. And for the first time, someone was finally listening. Amina's first foreign word wasn't learned in a classroom. It was caught off a flickering radio half buried on a shelf in her uncle's garage, playing Spanish soap operas through the Georgia heat. At 10 years old, she sat cross-legged on the concrete floor, mouthing sounds she didn't understand, repeating emotions she felt more than knew. She didn't have flashcards or grammar books. She had static, cadence, just and stubbornness. Her parents' public school teachers working long hours and second jobs noticed her grades, but not the fluency blooming behind quiet eyes. They called her well-spoken, respectful, sharp for her age. No one knew she was memorizing French verse in the library stacks during recess or mimicking Italian phrases whispered from secondhand CDs. No one noticed the moment she stopped sounding things out and started thinking in other tongues. By 12, she was correcting her cousin's French conjugations without knowing the rule, just sensing what was off. At 13, she found an old Learn Italian in 30 Days kit in a yard sale bin and took it as a personal dare. Arabic came next, then Mandarin. Is fly no no Yerman. Then Japanese. Her only teacher time. The late hours after dishes were done. After everyone else had given up for the day. At school, counselors praised her articulation with surprise. Surprisingly articulate, one said, as if expecting otherwise. At church, when she translated a guest pastor's sermon, the applause lasted 1 second too long. They were proud, but also surprised. The unspoken punctuation at the end of every compliment was always the same, for someone like you. But she didn't stop, because she wasn't performing. She was preparing. Language became more than escape. It became structure, discipline, power your stars your warn. Something she could wield quietly, precisely in rooms where no one expected her to lead, where they'd offer compliments with conditions, opportunities with training wheels. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't need spotlights. She needed clarity. Oxford came with its own kind of frost. Her southern drawl made professors pause. Her skin made classmates stare. The first time she spoke in a seminar, someone asked if she was auditing. The second time, they assumed she was on the wait list. So she stopped raising her hand. She submitted papers instead. Perfect ones. She passed her Arabic oral defense with a 98. The examiner's only question afterward was, "Where are you really from?" She smiled. "Right here. Then left. She didn't protest. She didn't campaign. She rewrote the system's expectations line by line. After Oxford, Morocco, then a Fulbright, then UN harmonization reviews before 30. Not as a translator, but as the person who untangled meaning from misunderstanding, the one who caught subtext before deals fell apart. She developed a reputation in hushed rooms. She doesn't just translate, she recalibrates. So when the board of this company contacted her directly bypassing HR, skipping over the internal shortlists, they didn't offer her a job. They asked for insight. She agreed on one condition. No title announcement. No internal memo. No Slack intro with a waving emoji. Let her walk in unnoticed. Let her watch who asked her to fetch coffee. Let her see who met her eyes and who didn't. She didn't downplay herself. She didn't perform humility. She simply arrived as she was, braids pulled back, shoes clean but plain, tone steady. The same way she had entered every elite room where she wasn't expected to stay. Because Amina didn't need the room to be ready for her. She needed it to reveal itself. And it did. Fast. Eater. The looks. The pauses. The way her name was conveniently forgotten in meeting recaps. The way Richard referred to her as the new language girl. None of it was shocking. It all mapped to what she'd seen before on every continent, in every polished conference hall, where power smiled but rarely listened. The difference. This time, she had a pen. And she was documenting not just mistakes in grammar, but every shift in posture, every withheld nod. Every time someone spoke over her in the name of efficiency, She wasn't gathering receipts for revenge. She was building a blueprint, not just to navigate the system, but to prove when the time came that she had seen it all from the inside and was still standing. The second morning didn't start with greetings. It started with distance, calibrated silence, the kind that settles once people have decided your worth before you open your mouth. Amina stepped off the elevator at 8:54 a.m. Same coat, same badge, same bag slung low against her side. But the nods were shorter now. Eyes flicked past her. Someone at the coffee machine hesitated, then didn't offer. At 9:03 sharp, a file landed on her desk. No context, no cover, just dumped. Bilingual draft from the Tokyo office. Half translated, half nonsense. Legal phrasing that didn't make legal sense. Cultural framing that was laughably off if it hadn't been so serious. She flipped the first 3 pages, saw where the tone had collapsed. Picked up her red pen, annotated clean, decisive. Then came the ping. A 12-message email chain. Subject line urgent, JP client deck. CC'd Richard. 3 leads, legal? Not her, but her phrasing was there. Her structure. Her solution. Stripped down, diluted. No name. Just Richard at the bottom. Glad we caught this. Caught EU. Like it was air. Like she hadn't just written it. At 9:19 he passed by. Didn't glance her way. We'll loop you in if it gets too technical, he tossed over his shoulder. Then Singapore's picky about food labels. Use your language thing. At 10:34 she rewrote the entire label set. English. Mandarin and but Kier, Yorki. Japanese. Flawless. Typography tight. Cultural tone exact. The one you Turkey. She delivered the trays herself. No thank you. Just a passing comment from a junior PM feels like Ivy League catering. Laughter. Soft. Perfectly measured. That was the art form here. No slurs. Just insinuation. Not hostile. Just designed to shrink. By 1:42, another summary landed in the inboxes. Tokyo strategy call. Her words again. Attributed to Team Insight. No mention. Just her work. Redistributed. Reworded. Rendered anonymous. At 2:11, a new task arrived. 39-page contract. Portuguese. Yardiren. Deadline 3:00. She delivered it at 2:58. No reply. At 3:46, she stepped into the print room. Found her own draft Brazil onboarding doc crumpled. Coffee stain. Red ink bleeding through. No one else used red. She picked it up. Smoothed the paper. Walked back to her seat. At 4:14, Richard appeared again. Tomorrow's Brazil onboarding. You should sit in. Learn about cultural fit. She paused. Of course. Ishichonum. Calm, wing. He nodded like he'd done her a favor. Behind her, 2 whispers. She's the DEI hire, right? Token slot. She didn't flinch. Just opened a new document. Title Quiet Systems. First bullet, who gets named. Second, who gets erased. Third, who rewrites without credit. At 5:06, the VP of Strategy sent the final Tokyo deck. Thanks, team. She wasn't CC'd. At 5:28, she uploaded the Brazil onboarding outline. Fully structured. Tone guide included. No one commented. But they used it. At 6:04, Richard dropped a sticky note on her keyboard. Don't forget we expect polish. Then, just as his shoes began to turn, no surprises in the room. Amina stared at the note. Then at him. No words. No reaction. Just opened her drawer, filed it under surprises, and typed apparently fluency as 1. The silence didn't arrive all at once. It crept in quiet, methodical until absence became structure. Monday, 9:18 a.m. Richard passed her desk carrying 3 coffees. He didn't glance her way, handed them to interns who started weeks after she did. One of them looked at her, paused, then looked away. Amina didn't flinch, just turned back to her screen. Tuesday, 2:31 p.m. She submitted edits for the French investor deck, 4 tense corrections, 1 cultural misreading. By 3 Russia, the new version appeared in the leadership meeting. Richard's name on the metadata. Not hers. No one asked. No one noticed. This wasn't noise. It was erosion. She wasn't being shouted over. She was being slowly faded. At first, she thought it might be timing. A CC missed. A handoff misunderstood. But then came the Wednesday briefing. She entered the room. Quiet, neutral posture, versarenur, woodinerum. The team lead handed out printouts left to right. Skipped her seat. She leaned slightly toward her neighbor to read. The woman beside her adjusted the page. Subtle. Not rude. Just enough. That afternoon, a calendar change hit her inbox. Weekly language ops sync now rescheduled. Overlapping another meeting. No one asked. She clicked maybe. No. No follow-up. Thursday, 11:42 a.m. She sent 3-line edits to the LATAM presentation. No response. No edit trail. But on Friday, the live version went up her lines word for word. Under team suggestions. She opened her folder. Patterns. New entry. Timestamp. Exact phrasing. A log not for proof. For understanding. Because this wasn't conflict. It was choreography. At 1:14 p.m., she walked into the office kitchen. Mid-laughter. A group stood near the fridge. The moment her shoes crossed the threshold, the sound broke. Paused. One person forced a smile. Hey, they offered, as if they hadn't just said something with her name in it. She opened the fridge. Took her sandwich. Left to one hun. No confrontation. Just another quiet subtraction. Friday, she noticed her name had vanished from the client email thread. She re-added herself. An hour later, Richard removed her again. No message. No comment. She didn't push. Instead, she translated a French clause for the quarterly contract, a regional nuance only a native would catch. Marked it clean updated. No one replied. She started arriving 10 minutes early, staying 40 minutes late. Not for praise, but because silence echoes clearer in empty halls. One evening, near the copier, she paused. A soft laugh carried down the hallway. She turned, saw her notes pages of handwritten structure crumpled. Coffee stain bleeding through the top. Ink smudged. No initials. No explanation. Just discarded. She picked them up, smoothed the edges, walked back to her desk, filed them in a folder labeled context. Her badge still beeped green at the door, but her presence didn't register. In hallways, she became background. Eyes passed her. Names skipped her. She answered project questions in group threads. Others got the credit. She fixed a clause in the German deck. Someone else said, "We were just about to catch that." The exclusion wasn't aggressive. It was efficient. Not loud. Precise. On Kantuam, they weren't trying to break her. One and mean. They were trying to shrink her, to reduce her presence to a utility, not hostile, just quiet enough to pass as culture. And in that shrinking, they revealed their blueprint. That weekend, she reopened her notes. Titled a fresh page, Exclusion by Design, she listed patterns, the split-second glances, the way voices dropped half an octave when she entered, how her seat was always set near the copier, the one hallway where greetings never landed. She wasn't paranoid. She was collecting data because sooner or later, she'd need the map. Not to burn the building, to draw it back for them floor by floor. Proof not of what they said, but what they erased and why she wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't a headline moment. No applause. No confrontation. Just a mistake, a misfired email that cracked the silence wide open. At 10:22 a.m. on a Thursday, Richard hit send. He meant to deliver the revised Tokyo strategy deck. What landed in Amina's inbox instead was his internal board memo. Unedited. Color-coded. Not meant for her. No recall notice. No follow-up. Just sitting there, waiting. She opened it. Scanned quickly. Under staff evaluation, risk to implementation, her name was highlighted in yellow. The bullets came clean, slows workflow with excessive linguistic precision, overcorrects cultural tone, mirror challenge directive tone, not aligned with divisional leadership, and then alone, unadorned, unclear loyalty. The words didn't sting. They confirmed, "Il faut se bien." She closed the memo, opened the actual Tokyo deck. It was worse than she expected. Mistranslated section headers. Stripped honorifics. Direct commands where cultural context required nuance. A machine job with a corporate polish. She didn't complain. She rewrote it line by line, tone by tone, until it read like diplomacy, not dysfunction. At 10:58, her inbox pinged. A Tokyo liaison, external. Urgent clarification, section 4. The message said Richard had told them she could assist. 3 paragraphs later, she'd clarified the verb, adjusted the tense, restored intent. At 11:06, the reply came, "You've saved us hours." Then legal wrote, then product, "Témoin Tuan." Then, at 12:30, the CEO's assistant scheduled a 3 p.m. sync. Subject language alignment. Lead aminum. No welcome. Just clarity. At 2:55, she walked into the executive room. Richard was already seated. The VP of Strategy scrolled his tablet. The CEO walked in last. "We've lost months to misread tone," he said. "Let's not lose more." Then he turned to Amina. "Where did we go wrong?" She didn't flinch. She laid it bare how Japanese honorifics weren't cosmetic, how commands had replaced context, how Richard's draft turned collaboration into insult. No raised voice. No defense. Just facts. Stillness followed. The CEO paused. "From today," he said, "Amina owns all language strategy. Nothing leaves without her sign-off." No argument. No glance toward Richard. Just the quiet weight of a room that had finally heard her. The shift had come not loud, but complete. The meeting ended at 3:47 p.m. The door clicked shut behind the last VP, the glass still humming from the tension inside. Amina didn't move. She gathered her notes with the same stillness she'd had all week: quiet hands, calm pace, a rhythm that didn't ask for permission. She knew what had just shifted, even if no one said it out loud. Because that's how real power arrives. Not with applause, but with stillness. At 4:13, a junior analyst pinged her. "Quick question on phrasing, saw you were looped in earlier." Mind checking. The tone was neutral. No emojis. No assumptions. Just direct. Respectful? At 4:21, someone in operations forwarded a contract and wrote, "Can we use your eye on this before legal sees it?" They didn't say help. They said your, as in it's your vision now, not borrowed. Unpin and unowned, Sir Elton. At 4:38, Richard showed up at her desk. No slack, no warning. Just stood in the quiet, just enough in her peripheral to force presence. Hands in his pockets. Voice flat with effort. "Hey," he started, trying casual. "Look, maybe we didn't start off great." She didn't reply, just turned her head slightly. He took that as permission. "You've clearly got value," he continued. "Things got hectic. Big rollouts. I might have underestimated what you were handling." A pause. A breath, or mine. A forced half smile. "No hard feelings, right?" He held out his hand. Open? Like this was a peace offering. Like they were equals. Like the months hadn't happened. Amina didn't take it. She didn't stand. Just said evenly, "You once asked me if I could make coffee." Her voice didn't lift. Her eyes didn't blink. "Next time you want to test someone's capability, read their resume first." He stood there a beat too long, then dropped his hand. "Fair enough," he muttered. No apology. No more bravado. Just silence, the kind that signals retreat. At 4:57, the internal comms team sent her a calendar invite. She was listed as the lead speaker for next quarter's town hall. Topic: language, identity, and global clarity. Her title now read Head of Global Communications. Bold, Serpent. Final, no asterisks. At 5:06, the woman who once whispered about Southern charm passed by again. This time, no comment. No glance. Her steps slowed, spine tight. The hallway noticed. Amina didn't look up. Didn't need to. The energy had shifted. The room had remembered. She opened her laptop, reopened the Thai expansion deck, highlighted a line, rewrote it for tone. She didn't think about Richard, or the jokes, or the printer. She thought about clarity, cadence, a Precision one of your emotions, because that's where she'd always lived. Not in reactions, in accuracy. She made her last change, saved the file, tapped her pen twice. That soft, dull sound echoed deeper than any applause. It wasn't celebration, it was confirmation. Because today, Amina didn't retaliate. She redrew the entire frame, reclaimed the narrative. Not by yelling, but by making herself impossible to dismiss. She didn't burn bridges. She made them irrelevant. It wasn't random. The silence, Surin, the desk by the copier, the missing invitations. None of it was accidental. It was a test, one she hadn't designed, but one she knew how to navigate. Because when the board hired her, they didn't issue a press release. They didn't loop Richard in. They didn't even add her to the team Slack until day 2. That wasn't neglect. That was deliberate. They wanted to see who would notice her. More importantly, who wouldn't. Her contract wasn't for translation. It was for strategic oversight, language precision, tone calibration, cross-cultural risk. She wasn't hired to fix typos. She was brought in to ensure the company's voice landed across Tokyo, São Paulo, Brussels without friction or offense. And who better to own clarity than someone who had spent her life being misunderstood? 3 months before she ever walked through that glass door, the CEO called her directly. A board member had recommended her a former trade negotiator who once faced her across a Berlin table and later told the CEO, she didn't translate. She shifted gravity. That call lasted 42 minutes. The CEO asked one question: how do you pursue clarity in a world built on confusion? Amina's reply was simple. You speak in the tone they least expect. Calm, fluent, and exact. He hired her that same day. But she had a condition: no announcement, no email blast, no title parade. She didn't want the company to brace for her. She wanted it to be real. Who would greet her without knowing? Who would interrupt? Who would ask her to fetch the coffee? She wanted data, not deference. And the company gave her what she asked for. Richard looked through her. Mid-managers minimized. Interns joked in Slack. No one had read her bio, not even the basics. They didn't know about the Fulbright, the UN work, the AI linguistics startup she'd sold for 7 figures, the policy paper that helped resolve a language access crisis in Morocco, the French deal they'd nearly lost. She salvaged it in her second week quietly, without credit. They thought she was on trial, but she was the one watching, logging, archiving, not feelings patterns, micro-disrespect, attribution theft, the rhythm of dismissal. She didn't react. She recorded, and now everything had shifted. Quietly, fully, the VP of Strategy CC'd her on every global contract. Legal implemented her edits without review. Product deferred naming decisions until her team weighed in. Comms asked her to review the next annual report. HR put her on the Diversity Council, not as a checkbox, but because they realized she was the benchmark they were missing. And Richard, he adjusted. No apology, but less arrogance, less certainty. He no longer interrupted, no longer rephrased her input to sound like his. That, for now, was enough. Then the board called for an internal expansion. They wanted a unified language protocol for every region, something timeless, authoritative. They asked if she could lead it. She already had a draft, but it wasn't just a guide. It was a cultural recalibration, a map for how to speak not just to customers, but to each other. No hierarchy, no code switching, just tone that traveled. What they didn't yet grasp was this: Amina didn't care about visibility. She didn't need a spotlight or a staff-wide thank you thread. She needed influence, precision, reach, bushery. And she had them all. When she moved across the floor now, no one stepped aside. But they straightened, watched, adjusted words or wasishun. Not out of fear, but awareness, recognition. She didn't command the room by presence. She rewrote the terms of presence. She didn't raise her voice. She removed the need to. She didn't take up space. She made the hierarchy irrelevant. Because she wasn't just in the room now. She was shaping it. The calendar alert hit at 9:00 a.m., sharp global alignment briefing, mandatory attendance. 14 names, mid to senior level. Most had never been in one room together. None expected Amina to be leading it. But when they walked in, there she stood, no podium, no preamble, just calm in posture, a single folder in hand. The CEO was already seated. No one asked why. The room settled quickly, not out of command, but atmosphere. She didn't smile, didn't rush, waited until every seat was filled, then opened the folder. The first slide appeared behind her. No color, just one sentence. 4 languages. You cannot scale what you do not understand. Then she spoke. In the last 4 quarters, this company has missed 3 international deals. Not because of pricing or product, but because the communication wasn't clear, or worse, wrong. She clicked. Slide 2, a clause from a European contract. Translated literally, it implied exclusivity. She read it in French, then English. That line cost us a partnership in Lion. Someone shifted in their chair. Slide 3, a Japan tagline. Meant to express flexibility. It translated into looseness, an unintended insult. That took 3 weeks to repair. Our apology was declined. Slide 4, a Brazilian campaign that promised more than it meant. You can't Google Translate trust. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't over-explain. Just let facts land. Behind her, someone began taking notes. Slowly, she pivoted to solutions. Protocol changes. Context-driven templates. Cultural consultancy checkpoints. A review system for every region. It was already built. She wasn't proposing. She was delivering. At minute 23, Richard raised his hand, not combative. Curious. Just a clarification, he said, his voice flat, careful. She responded succinctly. No extra edge, just clarity. He nodded. Thank you. That was it. No friction, just shift tone. When the CEO closed the session, his words were simple. From now, all outbound material contracts, campaigns, comms flows through Amina's office. Nothing leaves this building without her team's signature. No objections. That afternoon, HR circulated new policies. Language bias training. Cultural fluency onboarding. The document, her structure. Her name. At 3:46, Berlin pinged her directly. Your edits saved us. Call Monday at 4:12. An intern hovered near her desk. Did you really build the whole error framework? She nodded. Can I learn from you? Shadow the Tuesday review, she said. No questions. Just listen. He blinked, nodded, smiled. Thank you. He didn't ask what she did. He already knew. By Thursday, Richard's office stayed closed. Rumors reassignment, step back, repositioning. No one said it. But the Slack channel that bore his name was renamed Global Clarity Team. That clarity seeped elsewhere too. Lunch tables didn't fall silent. Her name appeared in acknowledgments. Not group, not group. Not team. Not team. Just Amina, thanks. In one meeting, the woman who once joked about DMV energy turned, waited, and deferred to Amina for input. No performance. Restauranterie supporters. Just course correction. After the Friday debrief, the CEO passed her in the corridor. No ceremony. Just one line, good week. She nodded. Good direction. At 6:03, she packed up her things. The office wasn't empty, but the silence had changed. It wasn't exclusion anymore. It was balance. Imaso. She didn't linger. Didn't need the room to clap. Because this was never about attention. It was about structure. And now, the structure had her fingerprint on every floor. She stood alone by the east-facing window, high above the noise. The office below her was settling, lights dimming, conversations dissolving into keystrokes and closing doors. Outside, the city glowed, not loud, not bright, but steady, like her. No fanfare, no parade. But something had shifted. Someone passed behind her, paused, then kept walking. No words, just awareness. 2 weeks had passed since the briefing. In that time, her name had been quietly added to 4 new project charters. Her title in the directory adjusted, Head of Global Clarity. No announcement, No memo, just correction. She hadn't told her parents. Not yet. To them, she was still doing something with words. They always knew she was good with them, but not like this. Not like being the voice behind a company still learning to listen. On her desk sat a small gift bag. No tag inside, a notebook hardbound. Plain. The first page read, "You made space for people you didn't know were watching." She didn't open the rest. Just placed it on a shelf. Across the room, someone from comms waved not out of obligation, but instinct. Real. A new hire during onboarding asked, "So Amina runs the clarity unit, right?" No one corrected them. At lunch, an intern offered her the last seat at their table. She took it. No awkward pause. No side glances. Just presence. Consideration. This wasn't revenge. This was revision. Not the loud kind. The lasting kind. Later that day, the young analyst, the one who once smirked during her first week, stood silently at the printer, reading something she had written. As she passed, he looked up slightly, nodded for you to him. Nothing more. That was enough. At 7:12 p.m., she took the elevator down. Alone. Her reflection stared back calm, unbothered. Not hardened. Just clear. This wasn't a happy ending. This was an accurate one. Outside, the wind moved through the alley like breath. She pulled her coat close. Well, so, no earbuds. No scroll. Ter shopper one-eyed for Nahina. Just stillness. Her phone buzzed a message from Tokyo. "We used your phrasing today." The client smiled. She did too. Just slightly. At home, she turned off the lights, sat by her window, let the skyline blink at her in silence. She opened her old notebook, the one from week one. Pages of patterns. Notes were in a one. Sornen. Names never spoken aloud. At the bottom of the first page, she added one line. "They don't talk over me anymore." Then closed it. She didn't share it. Didn't post. Just let it be. Because some victories don't need volume. They need permanence. And if you're still here, still watching, still listening, tell us. When were you underestimated? When did they ignore your voice, and what happened when you finally used it? Comment below. Because someone out there needs to know they're not alone. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. A centrum, a share, speak it forward. This is Unveiled Wealth, where silence is not emptiness, it's clarity.